Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about how do you step into service, how do you take on your mission, how do you expand your awareness, and how do you collectively join in together to be able to have a purpose, to be able to expand the world, to be able to create some sort of action, some change, and really get into the scope of getting things done these days. Many times people will say, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I really don't have that many people around me of like-minded or spirit. Or still others are saying, but it's never been done before. How can I get it started? Can we start to use our what if? Can we start to use our thoughts? Can we be open to change and say, there's so many possibilities. How do we step into this paradigm and be able to really shake and shimmy and have the world a better place? Today, my guest is Dr. Paul Zeitz. His book is Revolutionary Optimism, 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hey, Dr. Jeanette. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. I think that we talk about this in the year 2025. People are saying, I know I really want to change. I know I really want to step up and make a mark on the world. And it's so much different from the old legacies, perhaps?
Yeah, and this is a good time for people to explore how to take action. And so that's why I wrote Revolutionary Optimism. It's a handbook that is 7 steps for living as a love-centered activist. So it really helps people navigate their own personal growth, their own personal development, and then join together in love-centered movements to bring about real, bold transformation.
You know, I think the word, when we turn around and we say, what is really going forward, and we think about hope and optimism and change and the what-if paradigm, you know, but really we were coming out of, as we say, these other years or decades where people were kind of stuck. They were in this middle abyss, stuck on the bridge. And there were references like broken healers and, you know, we had to really try to heal ourselves and everything. I think truly probably if you look at it over the decades, I know for myself it's over almost 7 decades, it's truly about we had experiences and we were just moving through them and then we got on to our next part of our mission. So it really truly wasn't about a broken healer. It was about a soul to the human and how to rise, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that we are all on our journeys. Some may say we're all on our soul journey, and that includes experimentation, exploration, and going for things at different phases of our life. And sometimes we fail forward. Sometimes we make mistakes or things don't work out as we had hoped. And so we can still explore that experience as a learning opportunity. And yeah, I mean, I sometimes call it a healing journey because I've had my own trauma, my own early childhood experiences that were damaging to me. And so I think whatever people's life experiences, there's always an opportunity to kind of live into being our greatest self, our highest self, our most authentic self. And I think that's a lifelong journey for most people.
In your book, you share about how can I serve. Let's talk about that for a minute, because when people say serve, what do you mean? Is this a job I'm going to do? Is this something I have to know how to find a guru, get a template, read a book, be guided, or join others, or have a job? What does the word serve actually mean?
So in step 1 of Revolutionary Optimism, the step 1 is called It's Go Time. And it basically starts off with the premise of we are all really love-centered activists in our own way. We may not self-identify as that, but I offer the 4 circles of service, the first being ourself, self-care, self-love, the things that we do to take care of our well-being. That counts as love-centered action. The second is the circle of our family or loved ones. And any support or love that we offer to loved ones, our parents, our children, our friends, those are also love-centered actions. Then also some people choose to do work at the community level in a church or a school or whatever environment they want to be in. And that is another level of service. And then there's other folks that want to look at it from the national or global level, and that's a broader circle of service. So all those count as love-centered actions, whatever level you're choosing to take that action in. So I wanted to tell everyone right away, you're all already there. You don't have to get anywhere. There's already, it's a way of reflecting on what you're already doing in your life and helping you see how amazing you already are in taking love-centered action.
I had written in your book onto the side of one of the pages, and I wrote, what adventure will unfold to be a vehicle of awareness and expansion? Perhaps that's what we're truly looking at each day as we get up and we say, I don't really see it, but maybe we're just a puzzle piece of finding others to bring them together so that we can create this mission going forward, perhaps.
I agree with your sentiment there about the idea of being receptive and being open to the mystery of how each day can unfold. For example, today I went to a meeting with an old friend, and I hadn't seen her in maybe 20 years, and we had coffee together, and we ended up actively exploring a collaboration on advocacy action that I'm working on right now. And I didn't expect that. I was just going to have coffee with an old friend. So I think it was like my state of awareness and receptivity and openness, and the great mystery unfolds.
Right. You talk about the angry activists, and I looked at it and I said, is this perhaps the validation of truth? When we become angry, it's really about when our truths and our beliefs are challenged. And when we start to challenge them, we say, well, how did they get there in the first place? Someone taught them, they went through something really horrific, and that's their safety and their security, or perhaps they believe it because it is so within their mind and in their limitations and their filters. So when we talk about an angry activist, is that perhaps a shedding or perhaps a marching through all of those old beliefs and memories?
Well, I think there is an element of that for all of us on our journey. As we learn and grow and evolve, we have experiences. And I think the point of this part of the book was really to clarify or a distinction between being angry at the state of the situation and wanting to see change and transformation versus like the inner reality or the inner sourcing of one's energy or one's drive. And I know for myself, I spent a lot of decades sourcing myself from inner anger, deep-rooted anger. And while that might have made me an effective advocate, it also was eating me up inside and tearing me down. And so I kind of have evolved, and I offer in Revolutionary Optimism the idea of sourcing myself from a love-centered place. And from that place, I can have inner peace no matter what's going on in the world. And I can do strategic deployment of anger when I think it's useful as a tactic, rather than sourcing my whole personality from a place of anger that I might not have even known was driving me.
Right, because we all have a lot of triggers, that have come upon us within, our decades of life. And many people start to say, but I can't. Sometimes when you say I can't, it's almost looking through those rose-colored glasses, perhaps?
Well, I do talk about managing our triggers in step 2. I think it's a really important part of self-liberation and the journey of self-realization to realize our full potential. And first, recognizing that I am getting triggered and what causes those triggers. There's sometimes where I'm triggered by everything, everyone, all the time. But now, like, I'm not triggered by you, Dr. Jeanette, of course, but and I think that there's a way of, like, understanding how our minds work. I mean, we are default protective. We're default negative. We're always looking in danger. And so understanding that our mind is defaulting that way, we then can see those patterns of our thoughts, and then we can choose not to be driven by our triggers and not to speak or act when we're triggered, so that we can then center ourselves and generate our words and our actions from that love-centered place that I'm talking about.
But really, if you look at it, Dr. Paul, when we talk about it, we get to the point where we believe that we're all source energy, that everybody is in this together, we all are on this mission, there is no separation around between us or anything. But then we end up sensing and feeling everything that's going on around us. But immediately, I see a lot of spiritual people, they turn around and they say, I'm on this great mission and we've got it going on, and they believe they're in this space. But then as soon as something happens, or they feel something, or they get a medical diagnosis, or if something happens in their relationship or their world or whatever that kind of takes them to their knees, they're back to saying, putting up those walls, gathering all those filters, judging and being triggered. So then we say, are we truly in a world that, of separation, or are we truly all in together? I mean, kind of, it almost seems as if in the year 2025, we still have both worlds to exist in. We're just bouncing back and forth, because we can always say we're in one and feel like we live there the majority of the time. However, there are times when you do bounce back and forth. Yes?
Absolutely. I think what you're describing is the human condition, that all humans actually bounce from a state of higher self-awareness and being in their full self, generating themselves from a love-centered place. And then stuff happens, and people get triggered, and you get back into that judging place where I describe in Revolutionary Optimism, the inner dragon kind of rules the roost. And I think that's life, and so I think it's about developing resilience and capacity to identify the dragon and tame it, and understand that it doesn't have to rule every single day. And then if it does take over for something that gets me triggered, I don't beat myself up. I just say, okay, that happened, and I'm a human, and that's part of the human experience. So I think that's not unique to you and me. I think that's really a very common experience, and I know that I used to beat myself up. I would be frustrated. I would be self-critical for my inability to always maintain myself in that higher state. And I now realize, like, I'm just like every other human, and we all go in and out of it, as you said.
Yeah, because I look back on my own story, and last year, I was so ill after these past few years that I had actually ended up in a wheelchair, and I'm going, this is just not a good place. All of a sudden, one day, I said, this is not my world how I wish to choose it, and I didn't do it again. But I still couldn't breathe enough to be able to walk 10 steps. So I think the idea is that I had so many naysayers. You're a doctor. What's your problem? You can't figure this stuff out. And I just said, yes, isn't it awesome? But I'm also human. So what are you doing for it? Maybe I could try that. You know what I mean? I think if we decide that everybody is collectively here, we would have a lot less angst, so to speak, in the world. And I think that's truly what your book is about, is having a lot less angst in the world and saying, oh, yeah, I felt that. Oh, that was bummer. Or that was good and that was awesome. But be able to share it with the sense of going forward. And we're good. I got it. Because everybody's going to have something come along somehow, perhaps.
Exactly. I think there's a part of the book where I share about holding polarities, holding two truths at once. And you talked about this earlier. When you raise your awareness and you feel that interconnectedness of oneself with everything and everyone, it can be challenging, the suffering and the pain, and you feel it on the one hand, but at the same time, you can also hold the other part of the coin, the other side of the coin, which is the beauty and the joy of love and of nature, of the sky, the awesomeness of even the gift of life, even our ability to breathe as living animals, like that is so miraculous. It's like, how did that happen? And so what I try to do is hold both at the same time, so that when I get into an upset or a triggered state, I can more easily lift myself out of it and not go down into the wellspring of despair. And I can recognize that the suffering is there and that's real and true, but I don't have to get caught up in it. I don't have to go into the stress about it at every moment.
I think a lot of times we look back at a lot of practitioners or a lot of people in the world, and we say, why did the tax person end up with issues and he owes all this tax money? Or why did the cardiologist die of a heart attack? Or why did the nutritionist all of a sudden turn around and their child has ADHD? We are definitely a judging society, so to speak, where we put this bunch of parameters and we believe we have to fit there and stay within those walls. And I think sometimes when these things come along, I remember they were looking at me. I asked a question to someone when I was in the wheelchair, and they looked at me, and I turned around, and I just had an intuition. I said, did you ever know that a wheelchair does not have an age requirement? And they just looked at me, and they just froze, right. Because I could feel their judgment, and it was spot on. And I think that takes us to where you talk in your book. You say about, wait, why am I talking? Because I think sometimes we talk to share. We talk to be able to inspire. We talk to be able to bring unconditional love to others through our words. But sometimes we need to just say, yeah, why am I talking? I just need to, just stop for a minute. I caught myself, many times over these past years saying, why am I talking? And I just went, and I just started to get into that I was just like,
yeah.
I'm just gonna stop. And so I think we are truly becoming much more aware of this pattern in our open consciousness now that we're in this decade. I'll tell you, though, even back, let's look at 1980s or 90s, we weren't aware at all about that. But now we are starting to become that, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you. You're talking about step 4, which is called peace crafting. And that is the way in which we interact with each other. And the first part of that is becoming listening friends. Instead of like a judging friend or a shaming friend, it's actually being better listeners. And I do share that practice. It's WAIT, W-A-I-T. Why am I talking? And I've tried it's a practice to be in conversation with other people and then not always say what first comes to my mind, or not to be aware of using love speech, using the WAIT practice and making sure that what I'm about to utter is going to be uplifting and empowering rather than judging and shaming. And so I think that is an important practice that you highlighted.
Yeah, I've gotten into the word awesome. Everything is awesome. A patient came to me and they said, I've really got this disease and you're kind of like my last stop. And I'll say, awesome, I'm so glad you're here. And they're like, what? I said, yes, because you came and you're looking for something else. You're becoming a seeker. And isn't that awesome? And then they said, yes. And they were kind of like it had taken away all of that dredge that they were carrying. I think sometimes we carry a lot of dredge, in past stories, maybe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We live into the past instead of living from the present into the future. So that is an important pattern that you've identified. So, yeah, and you're also highlighting the point, which is also part of step 4, the love speech section, is that words create reality. So if you're creating awesomeness and love and optimism, then that's actually what manifests in the world. And so I believe that more and more people are living more and more minutes or more hours of their life in this state of love-centered approach to living, that the higher self. And maybe we're approaching a tipping point where we have a critical mass of humanity that's living in that way, and then we can see this transformation of our social, economic, and political systems could also be love-centered, so that we can create the world that we all imagine, many of us imagine, where we're living together in peaceful harmony and sustainably in healthy relationship with our neighbors and our planet.
Let's talk about the word revolution. You use it quite extensively in your book. The word revolution, I think of, since, as I shared, I'm almost 70. I have a lot of past lives. I live in New Orleans. They come up to me all the time. I can sense them, feel them, and know them. And I also work with patients at end of life. What I find is that when we use the word revolution, it takes us back in history. It takes us back to our story, our ancestors' story, the place in which we live, the earth upon which we walk, and the ideas in which we bring forth from philosophy or from ancient times. All of these are things that are there. But when you think of the word revolution, have we not, as humans and as souls, experienced and been in a revolution in many other of our lifetimes or eons of where our soul has traversed?
Well, I can't speak about the soul journey in the way that you're asking, but I can say that as part of human history and human experience, there are phases of evolutionary progress or evolutionary change that occurs, and there also historically are phases of revolutionary transformation or paradigm busting or paradigm shifting transformation. So yeah, if we do have multiple lives, and we do have that, we may have had that experience in prior times. So the point in my book, Revolutionary Optimism, is that I do believe we are either in or entering a revolutionary period of time where there will be massive disruption, and humans have the opportunity to be aware of that and make sense of what's going on and become resilient and strong in the face of the transformations that are coming, that are happening around us. So there are violent revolutionary experiences that have happened in the past that are happening now, and I'm offering the idea of joining forces with others to create peaceful revolutionary transformation. And of course, there also have been moments of that happening as well in our history as humans. And I think that we need to explore, like, what does that look like? What does it look like about doing peaceful resistance? How can we do that from our homes? We don't have to be the ones that are out in the street, but we can also join forces with others and be in solidarity to create the world that we want.
I truly believe that we all have an innate in us ability to be able to shapeshift in the world, to be able to create a wonderful world, to be able to experience and support each other. And I think that's truly what your book is about. And I think in the year 2025, we are all starting to, as we do with this show, we are starting to seed in thoughts and in words others to be able to come to the forefront. So I think we'll start seeing the waves, so to speak, to be able to build. I had posted the other day on one of my social media, I said, I'm here pushing sand on the beach. And I'm thinking, okay. It's just a wait kind of time. We are in that little lull, so to speak, time where others will start to come forth versus always having to drag them forward, perhaps?
Absolutely. I mean, the decade from 2010 to 2020 was the largest number of popular mobilizations happening around the world, where people were joining forces to advocate for collective well-being, for democracy, for protecting our environment so that future generations can have a sustainable Earth. And I'm sure this decade, the 2020s, will be even larger in terms of the opportunities that people are going to seize to create a better world. And we're at a crossroads, I believe, that we are at a moment of possibility or a moment of peril. And so Revolutionary Optimism is really an invitation to explore how can we join forces, how can we unify with each other to bring forward that peaceful transformation.
Very good. Well, Dr. Paul, it has been such a pleasure to speak with you today. I think because of what we truly have shined the light on, perhaps, is that there are many of us who are out there and it's time to join together. And I think that is really just to be able to feel a little bit lighter these days. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Yes, please go to drpaulzeitz.org, and that is a full website with all my books and podcasts. And I'm also working on Unified Movements, which is a movement-building platform to help people find their way into advocacy and activism if they choose. So that's unifiedmovements.org.
Very good. Well, Dr. Paul, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. Perhaps maybe you'll come out with your next book, and we'd love to have you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. If you'd like more information about Dr. Paul Zeitz, again, the book is Revolutionary Optimism, 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to his website for more information. And it is about being able to say, how can we step up? How can we form our mission? How can we get into service? And how can we find others to join together to be able to make this world a better place to live in? We look at the year 2025. It truly is about being able to say, what are we going to do for the next quarter of this century? And isn't it awesome to be able to have all these possibilities and these thoughts running through our minds? We'll be able to say, let's put them into form. Let's make them happen. Let's have a change. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.